Welcome to the Real Estate Espresso Podcast, your morning shot of what's new in the world of real estate investing. I'm your host, Victor Menashe. On today's show, we're talking about functional obsolescence. So exactly what is functional obsolescence? Those old 1950s houses with the tiny kitchens, you could touch both walls when you stretch your arms out, well, those are functionally obsolete. You could put in new cupboards and new appliances, but you still have a tiny 1950s kitchen. The functional flow of the home will not match the needs of today's modern family, where the kitchen is the hub of virtually any home. Economic obsolescence is when the functional obsolescence is curable, but not practically curable due to the cost of making the changes compared with the cost of outright new construction or replacement. Incurable obsolescence is when you have something about a property that simply cannot be fixed without a complete reconstruction. These are things like ceiling height. A modern office building simply won't do well with an 8-foot ceiling height. I had the opportunity to purchase a medical office building not far from my home. The building was owned by 8 doctors, and unfortunately it was at 50% occupancy. Even the dentist, who remained as a part owner in the building, decided to move into a brand new space across the street to house his dental practice. Even as an owner in the building, he did not want to stay in this functionally obsolete building. It's a building with a solid brick exterior. It's got a concrete slab for each floor and even a couple of elevators. Each of the floors has been carved up into small spaces for individual medical doctors and specialists. As these doctors have retired, there were no young doctors waiting to take over the newly vacated space. The modern medical practice today is centered around the family health team model, where multiple doctors share the infrastructure and the front office. Now, the good news is, most of the partitions on each floor are made of modular temporary partitions that can be easily moved and replaced. Almost none of these walls are structural walls. The building is supported entirely on steel columns. The ceiling height between floors is actually sufficient to handle the necessary electrical, HVAC, and plumbing infrastructure. Sounds promising so far. It's a 24,000 square foot building on 6 floors. It's not a small building, but it's not huge either. The biggest problem is that there are only 6 parking spaces for tenants at the back and 8 parking spaces for visitors at the front. The basic rule of thumb is that there should be 1 parking space for every 300 square feet of office space. That means the building should really have 80 parking spaces, not 14. Moreover, there's no land next door that could be acquired to build more parking. And at this point, it really doesn't matter how beautiful or how functional you make the building interior. If the tenants won't lease it because of it has inadequate parking, the rest doesn't matter. Looking a little further afield to see if there's street parking available, here too there's a problem. It's located on a major street with no parking. The side streets do have some parking, but it's not a great solution. And the movie theater across the street has said that during the day, people can use that parking space, but visitors coming to the building for the first time won't know that they can park at the movie theater, so they're going to be spending a lot of time looking for street parking. It's a bit of a shame that this project cannot practically be salvaged. Medical office buildings are a very desirable asset class. The tenants pay their bills, but if the space isn't suitable, or if there's a functional deficiency, you will simply never attract the tenants needed to lease up the building. The fact is, if that building were proposed today, there's no way the city would have allowed it to be built in that manner. City planners are much more mindful of the need for a project to be self-contained, fully self-sufficient, and not rely on city infrastructure for things like parking. Buildings like this are kind of sad for me to look at as an investor. You know that there's no way to salvage them. They'll eventually die and be replaced by something. If there was a larger parcel of land, it could be redeveloped into something more substantial. Whatever gets built in its place will probably be lower density than the current structure. You won't get something that large approved to be built on that site today. You might consider building something new that incorporates structured parking, but it's very close to the river, which means you won't be able to dig too deep before you hit groundwater. That's going to restrict both the development and parking to being above grade. You're not going to go too deep below grade. It's too bad that the 8 partners who owned that building didn't take proactive steps a decade ago, or maybe even sooner, when they had a chance to realize the full value from selling a performing asset near its maximum value. Now they're going to be selling it as a distressed asset. I don't know who the buyer will be, because it's not going to be me. Folks, that's what functional obsolescence looks like. So you're thinking about that. Pay very close attention to obsolescence issues. Have an awesome day and make some great things happen. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.